Nick Cicero, VP of Strategy at Conviva, and Jesse Redniss, co-founder of Brave Ventures, will lead our next session, Content Discovery in a Fragmented Landscape. Nick and Jesse, welcome.
Thanks, Lynn.
Hey, Lynn. Thanks for having us.
Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm here in the hotel in New York, and I'm wishing we were all in person, but it's good to see you.
Well, it's good to see you as well. And I love the blazer. Come on, got to give it props there.
Thank you.
So Nick, great stuff from Alex there. Really kind of tease off, I think, what we're going to dive a little bit further into. I'm pretty sure we're going to be saying this over and over again this year, right? But we've really kind of hit that next stage of maturity when it comes to the streaming services in general, right? From FAST, SVOD, AVOD, even short form content. With the industry really making this shift, there's more fragmentation than ever. And the viewer really has, pick of the litter in regards to where they can get their content, how they want to receive it. So, I read a couple of weeks ago a great research study into content discovery preferences of consumers. I'd like to get a brief overview from you on the trends and challenges that you're seeing on the Conviva side.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse, and I agree. I know Alex mentioned it before, but it really feels like we had a lot of acceleration with the pandemic and the entrance of streaming. Pretty much every major broadcaster in the world has some sort of streaming strategy, or they've launched a streaming platform today. And that really means that, we're on this land grab of new viewers and figuring out, okay, we don't just need to set up and spin up a service and deliver the great video, right? We also need to make sure that we're getting people there, that we're keeping them engaged, right? And so we did a study with Dynata that really looked at a general swath of the consumer and found that with all these different choices, that's one of the biggest problems that consumers seem to have today, right, is the content discovery issue. So I can share my screen real quickly here, but there's just a couple of the key insights that I kind of pulled out. I'll just share my screen right here. And so here you can kind of see just some of the top sources of discovery for streaming content as responded by the survey participants. And you'll notice that the number one is really about discovery by chance, right? So with all of these different areas that we have to consume content, how do you actually figure out what you're going to watch at any given day, right? Gone are the days that we just come at home and flip on the television, right? And it's really interesting, right? That chance discovery or streaming service recommendations really rank really high in terms of the respondents. I like to call this that serendipity effect. When you think about, how can I deliver the right content, but then also get people to want to come back or surface interesting recommendations that are going to get people to want to come back more and more. And then followed by advertising, right? So we're still seeing a big pull from traditional quote unquote linear audiences, and a lot of obviously streaming services are advertising on their other platforms, and then recommendations and social media are following up. So when you really distill it down to it, there are more choices than ever before, as you said, and consumers are trying to figure out the right services. 3 to 4, maybe 5 services that a consumer might subscribe to. But then when you get into kind of the free ad-supported world, you have a whole other set of issues when it comes to when somebody's not paying for it. Why are they going to come back and watch it over and over again? So it's really important to think about when you have only 4 or 5 services on average that people can reasonably subscribe to. If you are going to, not be like the Netflix, the Hulus, and Amazons of the world that are really, dominating, the top 3 to 4 services, right? Disney Family is inside of there as well. You really have to have a strong data-driven strategy to be able to understand how to acquire, engage, and retain viewers, because the competition is more fierce than ever before. You can't just rely on being one of the big dogs. You really have to, if you're going to run your own service, you have to figure out how you're going to get people to watch it and come back. And if you're licensing your content, you need to figure out how do I actually, deliver this to the right platforms to get the most value.
Yeah. So what you're talking about, the kind of, we use this term called the paradox of choice, right? Like when you have that paradox of choice, content discovery just becomes a challenge, right? I think as you mentioned, most viewers are signing up for 4 to 5 services on average. They're constantly being promoted to. People are gravitating towards shows, right? As well as in some cases, platforms. What does the platform actually come with in regards to accoutrements, like,
Yes.
Amazon Prime comes with, great, your Prime service, and all of a sudden you get the video. So how do publishers, right, manage kind of leveraging your platform to ensure success? I know you started talking a bit around like the deep insights and analytics, but like, what are some actionable takeaways that the audience here can really dig into to say, oh, totally get it. Here's how I can use, right, deep data insights, first-party data, audience segmentation capabilities to actually make that choice for the consumer easier to choose my platform?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, I think that there's a couple of ways, but the first way is really just understanding what people are watching, right? And I think before we've really relied on a lot of kind of panel-based studies to kind of gauge the insight into what people might be watching. And it's really hard to connect consumption patterns, daily, weekly, monthly, and behaviors with what they're doing, right? And I think one of the big use cases and why, publishers are using our platform is because we do really give you that second by second continuous measurement for every second of that viewer's session and are able to track them and understand them, right? So one of the great things about viewer insights is we have an identifier that basically is tracking these different viewers across all 3 different apps and devices. And we can actually deduplicate those and now understand, okay, if they're coming back every day, what are those types of people watching? Are they watching a certain category or a certain genre? And a lot of these things, to be able to take action on them, you might need to dig deep into the details, right? Before you might need to, really dig in and analyze and do a more hardcore research study to understand what a segment of the viewers are watching. But now with streaming platforms, we're getting 100% of that data every single second, which means that we can build more real-time audience segmentation. We can see those trends and clusters, if you will, of behavior and actually, start to take insight, right? So one of the things that we actually found in the study is that there are kind of 4 different types of audience segments that we found with the study with Dynata. One of the most interesting was the heavies, right? And these are the people that are actually consuming a significant amount of streaming video content. And those we found were often the people who responded most likely to be folks that are recommending to other people, right? So one of the things that I think is really interesting that we've been doing a lot more is how do we build this North Star metric with our publishers, right? So whether that is a certain number of pieces of content consumed or a certain amount of time that they're watching or a certain amount of frequency or a combination of all of those together, building that and then being able to understand what segments and viewers are moving in and out of that. So what are the people who are watching the most amount of content on my service watching and how are they, what are they looking at? People that might have just acquired because I launched a new sports event and I want them to stay on and watch other things. Are they coming on and then dropping right off, right? What can I actually use, right? There's really interesting insight that you can pull if you have an understanding of the people and what they're doing, right? So while you might, I think streaming is really a hits driven model today where everybody's kind of competing to have, the best original content and the biggest launches. And I think that is always going to drive a lot of the kind of top line growth. You're always going to have your hits that you talk about. So you're going to bring in a big group of people when those hits happen. But what do they do afterwards? And I think that those are where the interesting insights are. Do you need to know what your top 1 to 2 pieces of content or your top shows or series are? Probably not. Your gut's probably going to tell you. You're going to be able to see what's driving. But really those, 3rd, 4th, 5th, even down to like the 20th or the 30th piece of content that is driving viewership maybe by people who you might not see in other places. What can you do with those insights to actually take that data, build an audience segment, and then actually activate that, right? So you might run a lookalike audience to a segment of viewers that is less likely to be your heavy user. Maybe there's somebody that is watching it frequently, but you're able to find a nugget that they watch a lot of crime dramas more than the general segment that may be more spread out. You can actually use that and take those insights to go and create more promotions and try to bring in those types of people or even reactivate them.
So let's dig into that a little bit more, because I think you're touching on a couple key concepts, right? You're talking about from broadcasting, right, to narrowcasting, in which you're getting very deep into knowing your audience, which is so important for so many capabilities across every business today. But really, it comes down to also not just knowing your audience, but putting it into context to the consumer journey, right? What show did they come into to watch? Hey, I love and tune into the NBA games all the time. However, I'm going to go start exploring after that. And so creating audience segments and can say it's the NBA front door that Jesse came into, but then Jesse went over and watched, another show, right? A comedy show right afterwards, and then went right into a late night dating show. And he does that every single week, twice a week. And then obviously, knowing which devices Jesse is doing that on. So when we kind of break down some of the core capabilities, it sounds like what you're saying in this study, as well as the capabilities of what your company does, like you are providing deep data insights into all of that context that lets you really know your audience, lets you know who's watching, what they're watching, how they're watching, who maybe in some cases, who they're watching with. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's really about being able to get down to the single viewer, or I think as Alex mentioned before, that household level, right? So one of the great things that we have is the ability to deduplicate, because we're tracking every single second and every viewer session. We're actually able to build and not just show you all of the different devices, but then actually tie that back to a household graph. So you can go and take that data. We have partnerships with companies like Experian that could also give you an understanding of the demographic makeup and be able to use almost 100% of your streaming audience, whereas previously before, I think that if you had maybe 30 to 40%, you would call that great, right? So being able to have a much higher fidelity signal for all of that audience, and then as you mentioned before, how can I instantly create those segments? So you can go in today and start looking at viewers that you might have just acquired a couple hours ago and be able to get insights right away into what they're watching, where they're located, which you can then basically take those insights and behaviors out and then activate them, which I think is really key, right? It's not just being able to take those insights and say, this is what a set of viewers are doing, but then actually have the ability to either take that data and connect it with, let's say, like a CRM or a marketing automation system, or plug right into, an ad system, or even, if it's a retention system, being able to go and do things like push notifications or take action on that.
Yeah, so you touched on some important points there as well, where it's the concept of household identifier lets you understand what's being viewed at a household level, which is the typical approach to how GRPs were formulated. However, with Conviva, because you have your SDK and your sensor out there on a majority of streaming applications out there, you can get real deep deterministic view of exactly what is being watched by device within household, right? So as you start thinking about profiles in, let's say, the HBO Max, app, and when I go and I've got 4 boys, right? So they're messing up my profile all the time. However, they've gone and created their own profiles, and typically they'll watch their shows on their devices or my iPad, right? Whereas I'm watching shows on the big screen TV. And so you'd be able to provide a breakdown by household of the devices within this household are watching these shows, all nestled up into this household identifier. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, I couldn't have described it better myself. I think it is actually pretty cool to be able to take a look at that. I think it's been eye-opening for a lot of the publishers that we've been working with on this, right? Is, because you have that household ID and because we have all the devices that make up that, that's exactly what you said. We can understand, who from that household is watching on one of those different devices. And obviously you can go to the next level. So a lot of our customers will integrate, different profile quantifiers and basically anything that you could try to think about categorizing. If it lives inside of your video player or streaming service, you can send over and build audience segments based on that, right? So one of your sons might be really into, they might be using the exact same service. You have one that might really be into surfing, one that might be really into snowboarding, and you can kind of see the differences of the paths that they're taking, which is also really interesting.
No, that's really interesting. And so, I know coming from, my days at Warner Media, running the data strategy organization, we helped service and provide all these core insights to marketing teams, to research teams, and to product teams. And so one of the things that we loved doing, right, was taking a lot of these core insights and then actually building better personalization and recommendation capabilities, product services, AI algorithms that were deployed directly into, our CMS system, right? How we're actually recommending content, how we're programming the front door of our site and application, as well as then, programming a profile personalization. So how many of your clients out there now are really taking these deep audience insights, gleaning insights from how they're engaging with content on social, right? Which has got a chock full of psychographic insights, which provide context, and then meshing that with a lot of this deterministic first-party data to build cool products that truly do drive personalization and recommendation.
Yeah, I guess I'll take that in 2 parts. The first part, I'll say, as it comes to like personalization within the application or within the video player, I think that we're seeing a lot of success from publishers that are either building their own systems or being able to take data to help inform their systems, and then using things like A/B testing to understand, right? If I have, this set of a personalized carousel that is going to one segment of my viewers, how does that compare to a segment of the viewers that are not getting that personalized carousel? How deep are they watching? Are they, clicking in? Are they watching more content versus folks that are getting more of that personalized experience? So that's one way that they're able to use that data, and then obviously take those insights out with different segments to be able to look at content that's overperforming and inform those actual units themselves. The second part of that is, to your point about social, I think is really unique to what we're looking at. And I think, the kind of first wave of social as it related to kind of the traditional broadcast world was very much at odds. So I think the traditional TV, quote unquote, had, early on in the days of social media, some people saw it as a power. Folks, you and I met, we were both working at different companies doing social TV integrations, right? So there were a lot of companies that could see the power of the synergies, but for the most part, there was a lot of nervousness about, is this going to cannibalize our viewers? What's going to happen to our content? How do we get paid for the IP that we have, right? And I think today what we've also seen, and we'll reference the study, but we're finding more synergies than ever before with social media and streaming video, right? Especially in the era where everything is digital and you spend a lot of your time on social media platforms, connecting with friends and family, watching content from influencers. The places that you're going to actually be exposed to new content have changed, and social is pretty clear that that's one of the key places in which you can kind of see the results both in the study, and I'm sure that we've all talked about that. But what's really powerful, to your point, is how can you kind of take that to the next level, right? So in our study, we found that there was a direct correlation with the amount of social media usage that a consumer has and the amount of time that they spend consuming streaming video. Which, when you look at the segment, there was a direct correlation that viewers that were watching more content on social were also watching more streaming video content. And it's really important to be able to understand the power of that. So as I said before, think about the areas and the places that you might go to discover new content. You're not flipping through the channel guide anymore. You're not just watching 3, 5, and 9, getting an exposure to an ad or a cross promotion, right? You're sitting on YouTube and people are watching YouTube videos, or you're sitting on TikTok all day and you're scrolling through your TikTok feed. And so this is where we feel like social media has really permeated all of the other parts of really the marketing mix, if you think about it, right? My paid advertising, I'm spending a lot of that on social platforms to be able to take those audiences and insights and target the people that I want, right? My organic and building engagement is happening because I'm making, trailers and videos and uploading them to different channels and doing first looks and premieres on my different platforms, right? So I'm able to have exposure and get people to discover my content and get them to stay on there. And then you have that engagement factor and the retention, right? So how to actually build loyalty and build communities so that people want to tune in and watch, right? People want to have that water cooler experience and they want to be able to talk about it, as evidenced by the fact that people are discovering content through word of mouth. And Conviva, I think what's really unique is that we bring all of your social analytics and your streaming video data together in the Viewer Insights platform. So our customers today are not only able to understand, how much content is being consumed on every one of these different platforms that they're distributing video on, but actually directly tie the impact of social to their streaming viewership, whether that's through deep link integration, UTM codes that they're running, or even just using things like, time series attribution, the same way that, for years people were trying to stack Nielsen data on top of Twitter impressions and call that a day. Right now, we actually can go in and look at things like minutes consumed and average watch time on platforms like TikTok and Facebook and YouTube, and be able to actually directly compare those to the same types of content or the longer form content that lives on your owned and operated platforms. And once again, tie those insights back together. If I know that I'm creating behind the scenes or trailer driven content on social, and that resulted in 10,000 new people that I'm bringing into my service, I can track what they're then doing and go and find the value again. And once again, now because I can actually control what I'm publishing to the social platforms, I can update my strategy. I can create more engaging content that seems to be the most effective. So there's really a powerful synergy approach to that. So that's just one area.
Yeah. So with content discovery, if I'm hearing you, it sounds like, at least for me, word of mouth and the cultural zeitgeist that social platforms capture and help foster really being one of the most powerful places, right? That any publisher, any brand, any studio today looking to build an audience should be 100% activating on. And thinking about it in regards to a omni-channel approach, right, on how you're engaging your consumer, luring them in through engagement on social. But then, you were mentioning some of the deep linking capabilities of deploying out on social and seeing real attribution from that engagement on social to a viewer on your O&O property or whatever your streaming platform of choice is. And I think that's one of the most powerful components here, especially right as you're breaking down and looking at LTV of a consumer. Like, what's the lifetime value of a consumer from initial engagement, how you built that audience segment and lookalike audience based on some of the insights of the types of viewers you really want to attract, right, to your content. But then looking at what's the cost of acquisition to get that consumer to come in. Exactly. Did that person just churn out and we want to win that person back? That full closed loop opportunity of being able to know your audience so deeply with true first party data, which is so powerful, right? And then enhance that with other context-based, demographic-based, psychographic-based insights. That's really not, you're not seeing that off of a lot of platforms today. And it's kind of like a secret weapon, right, for so many platforms and publishers right now.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that, the next level to all of that is where we're seeing actual, the trends in marketing of social or marketing of streaming video on social platforms today too. One of the things that we talked a lot with a lot of our customers is just the move from not just advertising your platform or some of your shows, but also building interest-based communities that you can actually create those long-term engagements with, right? If I'm just trying to acquire and retain, most of the time it's very transactional. I need to run an ad, or I need to do a push notification and get you to come in. And a lot of, there's all these transactional elements where you don't really get the space to breathe creatively to be able to build a meaningful relationship, right? There's a lot of those like quick impulse things. I see an ad, I should go and click it, or I'm getting an email newsletter even to that fact. But I think that for Netflix or Amazon, we're starting to see this, but things that they're building are real interest-based communities that exist in social, where they can tell a story over multiple weeks or months or years without having to just market a single show, right? I think Netflix has gotten a lot of props for a lot of their Black communities or their geeked communities, and we're starting to see others kind of model that as well. So I know Amazon has started to kind of dip their toe into that, and Disney has a lot of different YouTube channels that are also reviewing different types of content that they're running themselves and building around fans of Marvel and others through different sets of content. So being able to kind of tap into those interest-based communities and then tying that back to all the attribution gives you that next level of insight, not just demographics, social platform and content, but a little bit more psychographics that's going into that, a little bit more depth and breadth because they're watching 10 YouTube videos, and so you can actually tell a really longer story and be able to bring that in. And I think we've seen a lot of value is once again evidenced by the fact that the folks that are spending the most amount of time on social are also ones that we've been finding are the most valuable for streaming publishers.
Okay, so I know we're running low on time here, so I'll ask one last question because I do know that there are some brand and agency people that are watching right now as well, and we've been very focused right on the content and the publishers. But like, just real quick, like, what's some advice that you would give to the advertiser looking to take advantage of some of these insights, some of these capabilities as part of their media plans and media strategies today?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I would say just two quick things. One is, in this new world of streaming video, the technical limitations of measurement are really gone. So advertisers and media buyers should really focus on partnering with publishers who are using reliable census level measurement instead of focusing on panels. So it's really important that and from an advertiser perspective, that you can understand the performance on the big screen. And a lot of the solutions that are point-based that might just measure mobile and desktop are going to miss the most valuable engagements on the streaming platforms. So I would encourage everybody to go and check out the work that Conviva did with NBCU, with iSpot as well. Kind of through working with these new measurement solutions, NBC was able to have results the next day across all of their owned properties. including streaming. And that really means quicker optimization for the advertisers versus relying on panel-based studies like with Nielsen and others in the past, right? Which for you as an advertiser means that you can adjust your strategy faster, you can make sure that you're getting the most for your money, and you can figure out ways to work with your publisher to get the most out of all of those rich targeting capabilities that we talked about. The second thing, kind of doubling back down, is I'm really of the mindset that I think that brands should be publishers and can be media companies. So I would encourage everybody, if you're working with consumer brands, think about what your brand streaming service might look like, right? And we're seeing with social media in particular, more and more video content is being created by brands and influencers on behalf of brands every single day. So most of the brands and brand advertisers that are out there have a ton of this really rich content, and you can let it live on platforms like YouTube and Facebook forever, or you can start to take control and ownership of that and think about how you might curate an experience, right? So the cost to produce quality video content has come down significantly, and I think everybody who can tell a story is really valuable. So I'm a big fan of the outdoors, so I see companies like Orvis and Patagonia doing full-length documentaries and feature films that they're really building stuff that could rival what you might see on Outside TV and others. And oftentimes they're licensing that content and building revenue that way. So, think about what your brand might do, the story that you might tell, and you might just find that you could fill a gap in your audience's needs.
Awesome. All right, Nick, thanks so much. I know that we're out of time now, so I'll toss it back to Lynn. So thanks so much for having us.